this is the time of hypotheticals and where everyone acts like they know what's going on, but really no one knows what's going on. And I just want to kind of run through a few hypotheticals, give you some scenarios, what you think the Bears might do if that scenario happened. Some talk from Schefter and all the other guys about different reports coming out. So I want to start with this question. When I posed this same question to Sean, he actually gave me an answer I was not expecting.
Okay.
But if let's just say in this scenario, the Bears stay there at 9, and these 5 players are available. Probably this won't happen that all 5 are available, but just in this hypothetical, let's say they're all there. You have Jalen Carter, Tyree Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Paris Johnson, and Peter Skoronski. Who are they taking?
I think they take Jalen Carter. I think they've done enough homework on him to know the situation he's in. Let's be realistic. I mean, it's the NFL. People are going to get second chances. We've seen it numerous times. And I think if Jalen Carter's there, he's the guy. I think he's probably the top guy on their draft board. Obviously, that would change if like Will Anderson was going to be there at 9.
Of course, yeah.
He's not going to be there. Yeah, I mean, I would probably say Carter. Tyree Wilson is another name that would be right.
So that's who Sean said, which surprised me because for me personally, it's either Paris Johnson or Carter. So for him to say Wilson, that was for him to choose Wilson over Carter. If they're both there, that surprised me.
Yeah, if they're both there, Carter. If Carter's gone, I think it would go Wilson, and then if Wilson's gone, I think it'd go Paris Johnson.
Okay.
I just think, man, like the depth at tackle, you could probably find someone later on, maybe the second round, or if you traded back, you could probably get an option there.
Mm-hmm.
The Skoronski thing just doesn't, for me, like I think he's a hell of a player. I also think it's the local connection that's really tying him to Chicago. Like if he was playing west of the Mississippi, I don't know if it'd be as strong of a connection. Yeah, I just think you fill that need of a pass rusher or a 3 technique on the defensive line first, then go with a tackle. But on the flip side, I think there's an argument that there's actually better defensive line depth than tackle depth in this draft in terms of first and second round. So I could see what that argument is for Paris Johnson. But yeah, I think it'd be Carter if he's there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, we have to, as fans and as media, we have to trust that the Bears, as you said, did all their homework and decided that besides the incident and what was deemed a misdemeanor, that Carter is still someone that can fit their culture and they feel like they can, quote, whip him into shape. Eberflus, last year comes out, says, get your track shoes ready. Maybe that's what Carter needs. There's been, so one of the dings on him is he a 3-down player? Or is he a guy? I mean, obviously he kind of completely flunked his pro day and was gassed and blah, blah, blah. So is that something that the Bears view that, all right, we can kind of whip him into shape and he can be this potential generational type defensive tackle?
Yeah. And, the other thing to note is they've done their homework, but what if they did their homework and they're like, no, like, what if they're like, yeah, we just don't, it doesn't fit the culture. I mean, that's a possibility as well.
Right.
So when I say do the homework, I don't like necessarily mean guarantee like, okay, yeah, he's cleared or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I think, leading into this draft, a lot of people talked about him as like the top player, like the best player in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be the case still. He's got some things to work on though. Like the pro day was not good. Like that's a big red flag in terms of on-field stuff, obviously of the off-field stuff. So, but I don't know. I think they just like him so much that if he's there, I think they're going to take him.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to pass up. I mean, the 3 tech is the most important part in that defense. Yeah. We're so desperately lacking it. And you have a potential generational one in the draft. And like you said, before the Bears traded out of that one spot, the talk was he would probably be the number 1 overall pick if we stayed. So, yeah.
It's a tough scenario. And you listen to Eberflus and polls, and they've said it more than once in their, 14, 15 months on the job. Like the 3 technique is essential for this team. You have to have one. And the Bears were dead last in sacks or dead last in pressures, second to last in run defense last year. Unfortunately, like they got to fill a couple of needs on the defensive line. So I think they would lean there with one of those 2 players.
Yeah. What are you thinking about there's some new reports coming out from Peter King, and there's been a lot of smoke about the Steelers look like a very real trade down possibility.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me. It would not shock me if Ryan Poles moved back. I think the Steelers are at 18, 19, 17.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, if you could stay in the top 20, I think you're in that sweet spot where like maybe one of the tackles falls, the wide receivers there. Maybe you take a defensive lineman, you could take a defensive back. You could take a lot of players at 17. So yeah, that definitely would not surprise me. I think honestly, Ryan Poles ideally wants to trade back. But also you have to kind of weigh that and balance it with like you have to find an impact player in the first round. Like,
Right.
You did get DJ Moore in that trade, which is big. But you went from 1 to 9. If you go to 17, you still have to find an impact player. If you don't, I mean, it's gonna be a little bit of a blemish, nothing too bad, but I mean, they could find an impact player on 17, but it's a little harder.
Right.
But I do think he wants to move back. I think he wants to acquire as many draft picks because he knows he has a lot of holes. And I think if you can get 17 and maybe a second rounder or a third rounder, ideally you'd want the second rounder because you're picking at 53. You already gave Pittsburgh 30, what ended up being 32 overall. So you really need a second rounder. I think if they get 17, maybe a second or third rounder, I think he'd do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels like, the scenario that a lot of people have brought up is trade back and possibly Darnell Wright's still there. I mean, that sounds pretty solid to me. You get a guy who's a really good right tackle in college, fits kind of what they're looking like in an offensive lineman. But of course, let's say they make that trade as Peter King's reporting. It sounds like the guy the Steelers want is Carter.
Yeah.
If the Bears trade 9 and Pittsburgh comes up against Carter and Carter turns out to be this star, well, that's going to be a big blemish on Ryan Poles' report card.
You have to almost get a star, or like, let's say you get 17 and like a third round pick. You have to get 2 starters, I think, right there. Like that would kind of help lessen it. I think Darnell Wright's really good. I think he'll be a really good tackle. The other guy, Nolan Smith, is like shooting up draft boards. I think he's one of the better edge prospects in this class. I think both of them are going to be gone by the time they get to 17. I think those two have just like shot right through the roof on draft boards. Both help their cases, pro days and meetings in combine. But yeah, you're right. If like Jalen Carter turns out to be a star, like a stud 3 technique, you better find 2 starters with those 2 picks from Pittsburgh.
Right. What are some guys that you've talked to during this process? Maybe guys that aren't, potential first rounders or guys that everyone knows. What are maybe some surprise guys that you've talked to that have caught your attention?
Yeah, it's a weird draft because like I feel like unlike previous years, there's been like there's like a consensus top 10 here, but there's been a bunch of guys that are like being mocked like 24 to like 48. They can go like in that range. It's kind of wild. I like the wide receivers outside of Jordan Anderson and Quentin Johnson and Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think Zay Flowers is a really intriguing prospect. Josh Downs is probably one of the best route runners in this class. Jalen Hyatt could be a legit deep threat. Doing like the homework on them, watching the tape, talking to people around those guys. I think those 3 are very intriguing in terms of prospects that, they might go late first round, if that. But like in Josh Downs' case, he hasn't taken any pro or any 30 visits. So he's probably got a draft promise or he feels good. Jalen Hyatt's like going from being a first round pick to, like I said, like in the 50s, kind of thing as Zay Flowers. The name, God, I just did something on him. I think it's Nick Saunders out of Arkansas, the linebacker. I think. Yeah. He's kind of really intriguing for me. I mocked him like the last pick to Kansas City in my latest mock draft. I think he's another guy that could like surprise and be, he could go first round, but then you could see him fall to the 70s. The kid from Northwestern, and I cannot say his name.
Yeah. We'll call him like AA. Yeah.
Yes, AA. He's a guy that like a month ago I thought would probably go top 15, and now it's kind of like the smoke's kind of cleared out a little bit. He's a guy there for the Bears. If he falls to the 50s, I'm running up and taking him. So those are kind of the 4 to 5. The running backs are very intriguing too, like Jamar Gibbs. I think he'll go in the first round. He's a very intriguing player. I think obviously Bijan's probably going to go for him. There's a couple good running backs in this class that I like, but yeah, those are probably like the 6 guys that I'm intrigued about.
Yeah, I want to bring up Bijan because that seems to be one of the biggest mysteries of the draft is where is Bijan going to go? first off, I'll start it with the Bears. How shocked would you be if they draft Bijan?
I wouldn't be shocked because I think I don't. It's tough because I don't think they should draft a running back that high at number 9. I wouldn't be shocked because I do think Ryan Poles could go in a situation where it's like, okay, I need the best player available. We have a chance at the best prospects in Saquon Barkley at the running back position. Maybe we just take a swing on him. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if it was a trade back and they took him in like 17 or in the 20s.
Right.
Same thing as like with Christian Gonzalez. Like people would be so upset with a defensive back. Personally, I wouldn't. I think defensive backs in need. I don't think they're fully sold on Jalen Johnson yet either. I mean, you look back, he got benched in OTAs last year. Like people forget that he was running with the second team for a good 3 to 4 practices. He's not a guy that Ryan Poles and his staff drafted. I think Jalen Johnson's a really good player. And I would take him on my team if I was making decisions. I don't know if Ryan Poles is sold on him yet. So maybe if you go Christian Gonzalez at 9, like there's a couple guys I think at 9 that like would not be the sexy pick, but like I'd understand those picks. And Bijan is obviously one of them. Like I said, I just prefer it 17, 18, 19, 20-ish if you trade back.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, as personally as a fan, I think that first pick, if they stay at 9, has to be O-line or D-line. Whichever guy they deem, I'm cool with that. I think if you start trading back, all right, now we can have the conversation of it. Does Bijan fall? Again, the guy I love is Joey Porter. I think he's, I love guys that have those family genes, those NFL genes. I think they always turn out to be really good players.
Yep.
So you trade back, you acquire another early second. All right, Bijan falls. He's, you can make the argument he's a top 5 person or player talent-wise in this draft. Screw it. We're going to take him and just run him a backfield of Justin Fields and Bijan. That would be insane. But I think if they stay at 9, it's got to be O-line or D-line. I mean, the trenches on this team are – the offensive line is below average. The defensive line is arguably the worst in the league.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's got to be trenches. I think it'd be OL, DL, 1A, 1B. I'd be fine with wide receiver, defensive back after that. And then I would say probably running back after that. But I mean, like if we're doing this 13, 20, 13, whatever, 13, 20 years ago, 2005, 2006, up to like 2013-ish, like Bijan Robinson would probably go in the top 5. He might even go top 3. That's how good of a prospect he is right now. But the NFL is just so different. I mean, look at the way that the Bears valued David Montgomery. I mean, they weren't willing to go that contract to Detroit. I don't think Ryan Poles would probably take a swing at 9 with Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I agree with you. Where do you think Bijan ends up going? Do you think he goes top 10, or do you think he's more of a mid first round guy?
I think if it's top 10, I think it's like 10
to Philly.
Yeah, 8, maybe 8. Who's pick? God,
Eight's
so
Atlanta.
Mocks. Yeah, 8's Atlanta.
Which no one mocks him there.
Yeah,
but I don't totally understand that because Cordell Patterson's aging. They have Tyler Algier, who was like a promising rookie, but I mean, I don't think Tyler Algier is like some workhorse back.
They have the other young back too, don't they?
I think so, but I don't know. For some reason, Atlanta just isn't mocked with Bijan at all, and I don't understand why they're not in contention for that.
And they're in a situation where they want to go all in on Desmond Ridder. I don't know if he's good or not. I think if like Anthony Richardson falls, I think they should go that route. I understand like, they take a quarterback back-to-back years. I think you should take a quarterback every single year. Now in the Bears case, if you believe in Justin Fields, you have Justin Fields. You take a quarterback in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 4th, maybe. But if you're in like the Falcons situation, like you don't know what you have in Desmond Ridder. Like if another quarterback falls like that, like Anthony Richardson, I'd take him. But like they're in a situation where they can add like a premier talent like Bijan Robinson at running back, and you have Kyle Pitts. You can kind of build around a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. I would do it. But yeah, man, I think Bijan's probably that sweet spot is probably like 10 to 18-ish because Pittsburgh's not going to take a running back. So 10 to 18, 19-ish.
Yeah. What is the vibe like at Hallis Hall on draft night when you're there?
It's fun. It just depends though. Like, let's see. Okay. Some notable ones that I've been to, obviously 2020, we weren't in there. As that was all remote because of COVID. That was obviously the weirdest one. Because like I was sitting at home watching it and like my wife doesn't really get to see like how I am during the draft because I'm gone. And so it was just pretty much like, all right, like let's order pizza and turn on the NFL draft for 3 straight nights. And this is how it's got to go. So obviously 2020 was like the weirdest one. 2017 was, it was exciting because it was like, okay, the Bears traded up. They're taking a quarterback. I've never been in, I've been doing this since 2015. So I've never been there when they've taken a quarterback like the first round or anything like that. So that was an exciting one because it was like, despite it not working out, I was like, okay, wow, they traded up one spot. What the heck's going on? And it's kind of funny because like you kind of get it, or you kind of get wind that something's happening, depending on like, a beat reporter might have a hint and he kind of like in House Hall, he's like, oh, okay. And then like he starts typing or like, then, like, okay, like check his Twitter, check this, check that. Because we get it before the TV essentially does. Like the TV's on a big delay anyway. So yeah, and all the reporters are there. Like maybe a couple outlets, maybe send 1 or 2 people to where the draft's at. But like that was exciting because like, yeah, it happened like that. We're like, we all thought, I mean, literally, I think everyone there thought it was Solomon Thomas they were trading up for.
Right.
And no one thought it was Mitch. So yeah, it's the vibe is like, it's just a mixture. It just depends. Like 2018, they took Roquan. Like I think that was kind of an exciting one. 2019, they didn't have a first rounder. 2020, they didn't have a first rounder. So it's like 2019, you're sitting there for the first night of the draft. Like you still have to go because if they make a trade, you have to be there. So you're kind of just sitting there, and pretty much 2019, what I can remember is just like sitting there, just talking to people, like just okay, like how's it going? Like how's the kids? How's this? How's that? But then last year, or what was it, 2022? Yeah, or 2021 when they traded Fields.
Right.
Like I believe that was also remote too.
It was.
That was another remote draft. So that was kind of like exciting because like it was the same thing. It was like, you're on Twitter, you're checking your colleagues, and then boom, it hits. Everyone's going nuts. Like I remember like telling my wife, I'm like, oh my God, like they're trading for Justin Fields. And then like I have friends like calling and texting me. I'm like, I'm trying to work. So it's exciting, but it's very, very hectic because anything can happen anytime. Like for example, last year we walked in an hour, 45 minutes before the draft started on day 3, and the Bears already made 2 trades while everyone's like driving to House Hall. So it's hectic, man. It's like you get to talk to Ryan Poles every night, you get to talk to Matt Eberflus every night, you get to talk to the players via Zoom like right after they're picked. So it's busy. I'll be there Thursday night probably till midnight, 1 a.m. Friday night, probably 1 a.m. And Saturday, I'll be there 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Or 8 p.m. That's how crazy it is.
Yeah. What have you been, what is your feeling on Schefter's coming out with a lot of these reports, a lot of these rumors that Texans aren't going to go quarterback at 2? For a while, I thought it was like CJ Stroud's going 1, and now it seems like it's back to Bryce Young's going 1, and that this quarterback run's happening later. I feel like this draft, I mean, most drafts, you kind of know what the first couple of picks are. This draft, like, actually seems completely everyone's in the dark.
Yeah. So I think Bryce Young is going 1. I think that's the only one you can really be like feel confident about. I think Houston should take a quarterback, but I see why they're not. Like, if you can afford to be bad again and get the number 1 pick or number 2 pick, like next year's quarterback class is, in my eyes, way better than this year's. I think you're going to get 2 generational talents in Caleb Williams and Drake May. I think you're going to have a couple other guys that are going to be solid that probably go in the top 10, something like Michael Penix Jr. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they should take quarterback, but I could see why. I mean, I could see them trying to build like, okay, we love Will Anderson. We love Jalen Carter. We love Tyree Wilson. Let's take someone like that at 2. Let's trade back. Arizona's probably the team I would keep an eye on. Like they don't need a quarterback. They have a bunch of needs. They need a pass rusher. Probably need some receivers. But like, teams are going to call. I guarantee probably 10 to 15 teams are going to call Arizona on draft night, looking to move up to 3. Probably same thing with number 2 with Houston. This is a weird draft, man. Like I went from thinking, okay, 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 5-ish to now I'm like, oh man, I just did a mock on it. I had 4 in the top 5. Now today I'm like, I don't know, man. Like I think Anthony Richardson can fall. I think Will Levis could fall. I think like Stroud and Young are going to go in the top 5, but it's crazy. Like we won't know. Like it's like you said, it's every year you kind of feel like you have I feel like we have the prospects that are going to go in the top 10. It's just what kind of order they're going to
Right.
go in.
Right. And I think that's why for Poles, you know, I would be stunned if he made any sort of trade back before the draft night, because this is a situation you just have to wait. Because if a quarterback falls, you know, maybe the Bears do the Fields type trade and they get another first next year, and you know, we're sitting at 3 first next year, or maybe again Carter falls and either they deem him like, oh my God, this is amazing, he fell, we're running to the podium to take him, or we got the Steelers lined up to trade back for him or to trade up for him. So I think Poles is, I mean, that's what the draft is. It's a waiting game.
Yep.
And like you said, we could have this top 4 run on quarterbacks, or we could have a guy sitting there at 9 that some team like the Bucks at 18 or 19, wherever they sit, feels like they need to come up and get one.
Yeah, you're right. I would not trade back until, and unless you get blown away again by another package, like I would not trade back until draft night. Like the best case scenario for the Bears is, let's say Bryce Young goes 1, Houston takes you know, a defensive player, Arizona State's takes a defensive player, Colts get CJ Stroud or Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, and then the other 2 that don't go just fall. Like if they fall to 8, 9, 10, or they fall to 9, like you're gonna get a ton of calls. Like you're gonna get calls, and you're probably gonna get a first round pick, just like the Justin Fields trade. So yeah, and Carter, like 2 quarterbacks and Carter fall, that's a dream scenario, because it's gonna be a tough decision for Ryan Poles, but you want to be in those tough decisions because it means I have teams calling, asking for this player, and I can get, like you said, a first rounder, maybe a second rounder this year, or a third rounder this year. Like that's ideal scenario.
Yep. Yeah. And like you said, Ryan Poles, you love being in that situation is a dream, because I mean, as much as we're focused on this year's draft, on paper, not only do the quarterbacks look insane next year, but the rest of the class looks pretty insane. I mean, you got Joe Alt, who looks like a generational left tackle. Obviously, everyone knows Marvin Harrison. I mean, you got some guys next year that look really, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, you got guys that would be, I mean, Marvin Harrison would be a top 5 pick this year. I'm convinced of that.
Yep.
Joe Alt probably would be as well. I mean, you really have guys that would be going top 5 this year. Then if they somehow had 3 first-round picks next year, I mean, you talk about ammunition. That would just be ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they could realistically, if that happened, they could have a top 10, 2 top 20s. You could have a top 10, a top 20, a top 25. Like that would be ideal. You could have 2 top 10s maybe. Like that's ideal scenario for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm excited. I know you are excited as well. I mean, it's the draft, besides the Super Bowl. Everyone who knows me, the draft is like my favorite event of the year. It's just, it's the event where every team feels like they got the next Hall of Famer. And it's just, all it does is build hope. No matter if you like the pick or not, you convince yourself that that guy is going to be a star.
Yeah.
And it's just, no one knows. Everyone's just doing what everyone else is doing. They're just sitting there watching the television.
Yeah, it's exciting 3 days.
Goodell to read a name.
Yeah. And anything can happen too. Like any trade could go down. It's pretty exciting. I think we're going to get a couple trades of players too. Like last year we saw 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Right. Like in the first round, I think we could see a couple more this year too.
Yeah. That was interesting last year. You know, you got AJ Brown and then Hollywood Brown. That, like, I feel like that didn't used to be common. And then you see 2 big time receivers in one draft get traded. I agree. I think maybe that's a new trend we start to see.
Yeah, I think that's it. Because you look at these like last 3 to 4, especially the wide receiver classes, like those 3 or 4 wide receiver classes have been really damn good. Like wide receivers very deep. Like you can find guys for cheaper to produce. Like I wouldn't have traded AJ Brown, but that's Tennessee's decision. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. All right, Zach, thank you for coming on. You enjoy Hallis Hall. I know I'm gonna enjoy Kansas City.
Yeah, have fun
there. Yeah, it's gonna be a blast.
Have fun, man. Take it easy.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Too.